evening. Welcome. Our hopes, nobody wasn't going to come, have been assuaged for sure. We're way cooler than we thought we'd be. So we're pretty happy. We're glad you came and joined us here tonight. Before we get officially rolling, I'd like to call up Hannah Maxwell to do a land acknowledgement for us. If you had a cap on, maybe we'll just, take them off a little.
I'd like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, the people of the Three Fires known as the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi nations, and further give thanks to the Chippewa of Saugeen and Chippewa of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen First Nations, as the traditional keepers of this land. Thank you.
Okay, Linda, I think we're all ready to get going. There's a beauty here in Paisley. There's two rivers, and it's kind of gently curving Queen Street. And it's many heritage buildings, homes, and tree-lined streets. And it's in its people, like here tonight, when we clearly gathered for an event of recreation. And it's a quiet beauty. It's not the kind of beauty that takes your breath away. It kind of grows slowly in you like a gentle warmth as you watch children playing or smiling at a newborn. And it's a beauty that seems to arise from the meeting of people and place, like the Teeswater and the Saugeen around us, right here in our town, Paisley, where the rivers meet. Good evening. I'm Zach, and I'll be your host and guide, and this is part one of P150, the community play. And how this beauty here came to arise, well, I think everyone in the room here would agree that the rivers play a large part in that. But there's much more to it, much more.
History can give us hints.
But it's our heritage that can help us understand that beauty's origin.
Because our heritage is made up of those moments and people from our past. We choose to remember in the present
And hope to pass on to those in our future.
heritage stories that tell us about ourselves. Here, where the people and the rivers meet.
And it all begins with a dream, and a raft, and two rivers, and a tavern.
Imagine you were on the Atlantic Ocean in 1841.
For months and months and months and months.
Simon Orchard with parents and siblings arriving in New York, and then
Pushing onto property near present-day Durham.
imagine 1851, 10 years later, and the dream.
Yes, the dream of two rivers.
Hearing of free land in the Queen's Bush. Loading your wife Lily Ann and your small girls.
On a raft of cedar logs 15 by 30 feet.
With a pot, a pan, and the family Bible.
Rafting down a swollen river until you're attracted by a particular elm tree at the meeting of two rivers. You land, and for the first time you see the dense, impenetrable forest.
Of cedar. Pine, maple, ash, and oak.
There's a moment. What do? Well, everybody here, I think we all know, they got to clearing the underbrush, cutting down trees, building a first shanty, and then a rudimentary cabin. And then they were followed by Samuel Rowe, Simon's brother-in-law, with his family, and his dream of someday owning a tavern. And Rowe was followed by many others, and soon, within a few years, there was a new mill, a tannery, a blacksmith shop, a foundry, and a brickyard here, right at the confluence of the two rivers.
There's his moment.
Those early settlers were imperfect people like us.
Imagine, who could have easily just stayed in larger centers when they first arrived. But they built community.
And by focusing on their abilities and gifts,
Created a home.
And their response to those first few moments in the dense undergrowth is the basis of our heritage here today.
Because what they saw here was not an impossible challenge.
what they saw here was freedom.
And that heritage is alive in us today.
Oh, the bell's gone. Ding it in, ding! Imagine that! Surprise! This is live. And part one. Part two. Education through the years in Paisley.
At a public meeting in September of 1856,
It was proposed that a new school be built
flow forward to 1872 and the building of a new and larger school,
on Albert Street at Inkerman.
and then on to the fire of February 1914.
Leading to classes being held on the stage of this town hall.
While the new school was rebuilt.
this time with plumbing and heating.
Now fast forward to 1969 to our present day Central School, built to serve kindergarten through grade 8.
Heritage moment. This is a photograph of Miss J.B. Vasey,
who began teaching here in 1926 and later became school principal.
A position she held until 1957.
making her the longest principal of Ontario Public School and leaving a legacy of care for students.
That is ongoing today.
And we know.
We can vouch for that.
I'd like to invite Mr. Lewis Kaufman here to the stage to share his impressions of education in Paisley in the early days.
I'm speaking about education in the 1960s. A little bit earlier than that to begin with. I graduated from Hamilton Teachers College in 1955. That's the middle part of the last century. I was hired by a three-man school board, yes, they were all men, for a position of principal of a two-room public elementary school in Wellandport on the Welland River in Lincoln County. After teaching there for 5 years, in September 1959, I was hired by another three-man school board as the principal of the 5-classroom Paisley Public School. At my new position in Paisley, having a staff of 5 teachers and a custodian was an exciting experience for me. And having a young male principal was a new experience for the community as well. In fact, just how novel having a young male principal was became obvious to me quite early during a visit to Teddy Ellis' barbershop. Since I was a newcomer to the village, Teddy was interested in how I fit into the community. When I told him where we were living, he paused, reflected for a moment, and then said, "Oh, you must be the son of the new principal at the school." I went home and promptly began to grow a mustache to add a few years to my appearance. In that year, the girls entered the school from the doors on the south side and the boys from the north entrance. The play area for the boys was on the north side, down the slope there, and the girls spent their recesses and noon hours on the south side of the school on the flat area there. There was definitely no playing together on a mutual playground. The 8 grades, there was no kindergarten class at that time, were divided among 5 of the 8 classrooms with 28 to 32 pupils in each room. In my classroom, I taught 28 students in grades 7 and 8. Since I had no relief time in the first year, I had to do the administrative duties during the school hours and after school. I'm sorry, I didn't do them during school hours. I did them after school hours and on weekends. Eventually, I was given a half day each week to provide staff supervision and to complete all the required clerical duties. 3 of the rooms were downstairs and 2 were on the upper floor, where there was also a small office area. Gathering classes together for general assemblies was a different experience for all involved. Some students sat on the stairways on either side of the entrance hallway, while others found space on the floor at the front entrance. Definitely not particularly comfortable nor a desirable situation, but it worked because it was the only way so many could fit into the limited space available to us. There was no gymnasium, just a small room with a low ceiling in the basement where some teachers took classes for obviously limited physical activity. An elementary school in the village is a location where children learn many facets about the meaning of community. The school is their community within the larger context of that word. In my years as a principal, one of my goals was to have students become part of the community. We had concerts in the town hall. I don't know whether we ever filmed this or not, but we did have concerts up here. The school choir participated in a Christmas carol service in the church, and we used the fairgrounds for our annual field days, with all classes participating in events. During school assemblies, and through articles in the P150 Advocate, we recognized and acknowledged individual efforts in public speaking competitions, team sports, and the students' other achievements within the village. Students from those early 1960s who have stayed in Paisley have contributed significantly to this growth. This outcome has always been one of the values of having an elementary school set in as an integral part of our community. I was very privileged to have had significant opportunity to work with the staffs, students, and members of the community in those early 1960s. Many changes continue to occur in educational systems, both locally and provincially. May our students continue to be empowered to find their years in school a positive experience, one that is filled with memorable events and a lasting appreciation for being part of this beautiful village we all call home.
Thanks, Lewis. That was fantastic. Another pretty significant moment in the history of education here in town happened not that long ago, in pretty recent memory. And for the sake of brevity, I think we'll summarize that now.
I'm from Kingsblart.
He says he's from Queen's Park.
Wibbly close, but George Sloop.
He says they're going to close the school.
There's a problem belonged as a Jeduzel Review.
Some kind of process known as, say that again?
Jeduzel Review.
Jeduzel Review.
Wibble neebly to prove George Sloop is viably.
Says that we've got to prove that the school's viable.
Wibbly neeble done official bloody.
Says we need some kind of official study.
Oh, the whizzle wuzzle flonky flonk.
The very thing.
That was supposed to be.
Is that how they talk in downtown Toronto?
Or just Queen's Park.
Possibly all Toronto.
And more or less, just like that, our school was saved. The document that they produced was actually a study that had been done earlier by Parks and Rec. And this study outlined that there'd be a growing number of students coming to the area using the school as a direct result of the increased activity down at the old atom smashing plant at Bruce Power. This document and an entire group that worked tirelessly ended up saving our school, which we are all thankful for here today. And before we get off of this topic of education, I'd be pretty remiss to not talk about another institution closely aligned with education and our aspirations here in town, the public library. This is Miss Ann Scott, and she was the librarian here in town for quite some time, but not nearly as long as that lady stuck on the wall in that photograph back there. You see her? Yeah? That's Miss Sarah McCallum. She's the judge's daughter, A.B. McCallum's daughter.
Another remarkable woman Like so many in our heritage,
She oversaw the move of the library to a small room here in the town hall.
where she promptly knocked down a partition for more space and found shelving and furniture.
Miss McCallum here. Oh, she's a little bit bigger now. She was a librarian here for 47 years. And her career mirrors the dedication of so many of the past and present here in town. And, speaking of libraries, if you're like me and you haven't been to the public library since about 1995, it's not in that building down there beside Della Boutique. It's been moved. It's in the arena. It's up on the second floor. They put a whole elevator in there and everything. Oh, yes?
No!
Oh, I think it's time we move on to our next section of this play, Paisley Agricultural...
No!
She's upset that you're taking too long.
I'm sorry, do you need any help?
We know all about grass and grains.
Great, grass and grains. And you there, Mouse?
Soil and stuff.
Soil and...
No!
Can we begin?
Yeah, I'll just take that and I'll be over here.
The Agricultural Society is actually older than Paisley. Formed in 1856.
Hey, down here, our ancestors were on that rock retirement orchard. Yes, yes, yes!
How does that pertain? Mice are so silly. A constant aggravation. I'll continue. In 1856, the first Council of Eldersley was formed. And one of the first proposals was to form an agricultural society. And they did. We did that well, I think. It's still your line. Oh, good lord. That first society held its initial fairs at various locations around Paisley, and by 1865 had 71 members, who in 1879 raised money to purchase the current fairground property. The end. That's it, isn't it?
No, no, no. I've lost mine.
Well, then why don't you say it?
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
I'm young and down my mind to play.
So, what's changed, you might ask? Well, farming seems to change year after year after year. I was born into farming, going on 5 decades. And, well, all my adult life, I've been married to a farmer. Well, Frank, my husband, and I are in dairy. We've been in dairy going on 3 decades now. And we started with cans and then buckets, and now we've transitioned to vacuum lines. And of course, there's the ever-changing interest rates. Now there's a change you can spend a sleepless night on. Well, I guess that pops into my head because, well, I do the books. I used to do manual cash flows, but now it's all on computer. Yeah. You know what? I'm going to look at my life because I'm a farmer's wife. I'm not actually an actress. Some pretty hungry cows at home right now. So what's changed is also the cost of land and the cost of equipment and all the rules and regulations. But as I was saying, you need to be computer literate these days because everything's done on computers. Our cows are now fed by robots, and well, last I checked, I think they prefer it. I mean, they used to give us 20 liters of milk a day, but now they give us 80 liters a day. And they don't go outside to graze anymore. They prefer to stay indoors, you know, with the consistent temperature and the steady diet. I could go on and on. But what I really wanted to talk to you about was a farmer's best friend, other farmers. Well, even if you don't see them from one day to the next, and you only socialize maybe once a year at the fall fair, but you look out for each other. Frank was hauling corn one day, and he saw some smoke in the distance coming from our neighbor's farm, and so he hauled it over there, and by the time he got there, 3 other neighbors were barreling down the side road, and all together they pulled a burning tractor out of our absent neighbor's barn. It's what you do. And having mentioned it, we love our fall fairs. Oh yeah, I've been going since I was a child, and I just love it. I like to compete for ribbons and baking and knitting. And you learn things from other farmers at the fall fair, all new techniques and things, and just socialize. Rick and I learned about using radish as a good cover crop because its roots go 2 feet deep into the soil, and when they rot, they leave a nice little hole for the spring rain to fill up in. We learned about that at the fall fair. You know, the fall fairs haven't changed that much year after year. They've just gotten better and better. You know, with all the other changes in this world, it's good that some things stay the same. Oh, and a word of advice, never try anything new in a leap year.
The farming community here is an integral part of Paisley's heritage. And I don't think anything really contributes more to the preserving and keeping of that heritage than our annual fall fair. We've got exhibits like quilting, we got vegetables. What else do we got? We got more quilting, and then we've also got some cow shows, shearing the sheep. You can see that all day long. And who can forget the best part? This is the best part. The horse shows. The Clydesdales, which are very jittery, and there are a 4 and a 6 horse hitch. And frankly, there's a whole bunch of other horse shows, and honestly, if you can get to it, it's the best part of the fair. Yes? A heritage moment. Well.
Members of local families often led the Ag Society
In organizing the fair,
and with many still active in generations of Greggs,
McTeers,
Fullertons, to name but a few. The Teeple family, for instance, has been involved
for more than 50 plus years.
with Gladys Teeple acting as secretary-treasurer for 40 years.
So, just like any other year, this year, more than 80 volunteers gathered months in advance, sort of divvied it up, formed some committees to figure out what various aspects of the fair needed to be looked after. And by focusing on their abilities and gifts, much like the settlers from 168 years ago, the year of the first fall fair, they put up fences, tents, got the palace ready, set up all the exhibits, did the horse grounds, and they do this all for like a one-day fair. It's a living heritage to the first Sunday after Labor Day every fall. Oh. Clang, clang! And part 3. Part 4. The buildings and heritage, the buildings of Paisley and Empire. Enterprise, oh my God. Ha!
At any point in Paisley's first 75 years or so, one could fairly characterize Paisley as being an agricultural village, since the health of its businesses and services were connected to the agricultural communities surrounding it.
But as we approached Paisley's centennial in 1974, a group of citizens spearheaded by Reeve Andy Cormack, Eric Parker, and Rob Brown wanted to bring attention to the fact that Paisley had many significant and beautiful buildings.
And they worked hard to achieve historical designation for several of them, like this town hall that you're all sitting in tonight.
That would make raising money easier for needed upkeep and renovations. One such building was the Steel Block, built in 1890 by John Elliott of Chesley, after fire destroyed the previous building.
All right, I'd like to introduce Karen Kimple, owner of the Elora Soap Company.
In the fall of 1989, there were a lot of commercial buildings for sale in Paisley, cheap. And it felt a lot like Elora, where I started my soap business in 1987. The steel block was covered in brown aluminum siding, as was most of the Queen Street North block. This hid all of the broken windows that had blown out during a fire that took the arena years before. Our walkout basement had a dirt floor, and much of the building had no plumbing and very little hydro. There's one. It took 2 or 3 years to get the place in shape, but we loved Paisley, and I remember to this day our first visit, and how my husband John and I stood on the bridge and looked at the wonderful views in all directions. We went into the drugstore and noticed the pressed tin ceilings and the recent restoration. We loved the town hall and the 4 mills, the buried hydro lines, and the interlock sidewalks. We were lucky enough to meet Norman Hagedorn in our early times here, Shelley and Eric Parker, Andy and Verna Cormack, and Gladys Teeple, a whole lot of people with dreams and vision. This town has always had a remarkable number of talented and creative people. As I was saying, I started my business in Elora. I had one customer that had 5 stores in Quebec, and a second that had 7 stores in Ontario. Being early in the natural soap making business, I had very little competition, although I had to spend a lot of time educating customers about the benefits of natural skincare. Nobody knew what essential oils were, and suppliers were difficult to find. This all changed over the next few years, especially when the Body Shop came into Canada. And when we were first in Paisley, we didn't have much of a store because we were focused on wholesaling to other stores and doing craft shows out of town. In fact, those early days, we would literally take our show display in the front door, and that would be our store open to the public. But as the years passed and my business was no longer based on doing wholesale trade shows and retail craft shows, I was able to turn my attention more to the store. Then, as now, the kind of people who visit my shop, besides our many local neighbors and friends who are valued customers, are tourists who are attracted to the pristine environment. I've lost track of the hundreds of people who compliment the beauty of this town and the number of times that I've heard the word charming used to describe Paisley. And as I've been able to make a life here for myself and my family, a chemist turned shopkeeper in a community with people who fight to save their school and work all those extra hours to get a splash pad or reopen our local grocery store, it's not a bad life for a 12 student of genetics in the most beautiful of villages I know. The phrase, small is beautiful, is a reality I live every day.
Thank you, Karen. That was very touching.
Any place is more than a fact of geography. It is an act of imagination, both in the vision that led to its buildings and streets and parks and signage, as well as the many associations and activities that happen there, imprinting themselves ever after in our individual and shared memories. This applies especially to our Paisley Pharmacy, a significant landmark that we all frequent.
In 1908, this building was the general store of Araby in Isidine. When it burned down, the owners settled with their insurance company, but immediately left Paisley, only to be tracked down later and arrested for defrauding their creditors.
Meanwhile, grocer Frank Carter purchased the burned out site, rebuilt and opened his grocery, F. Carter and Son, in November of the same year.
Until the store was sold to T.H. Pierce,
Who sold to Harvey Matthews, who
moved the pharmacy next door
into his bigger store in 1943.
and eventually they sold to Ralph Anderson in 1956
Until Mary Ellen and Craig Boudreau bought the business in 1989. And to finish up this little flow about the Paisley Pharmacy, I'd like to invite their daughter Emma to read some excerpts from an online post she made that sums this up much better than we ever could.
I've modified it a little bit since I posted it, since it was an entire year ago. So 35 years ago, my parents, Mary Ellen and Craig Boudreau, moved to Paisley and took over the town's little drugstore. Mary Ellen's role as a pharmacist has changed considerably over the past years, from being a druggist responsible for checking and dispensing medication, to becoming a primary care provider dispensing invaluable healthcare advice, administering vaccines, and now prescribing. For 35 years, Craig has managed the front shop and kept the business running from behind the scenes, while also running the Paisley Advocate for many years, and somehow also managing to create the magic windows that have delighted the community every season. With a pharmacist's mother and an engineer father, it's not surprising that my brother Charlie and I grew up into big nerds. Charlie's particular flavor of nerdiness sent him on many paths, but they all led back to Paisley, where he now manages his own store in the building next to our pharmacy, which began as McDonald's Hardware in 1887 and was also the Masonic Hall for some time. My nerdiness sent me to pharmacy school, where I met my now husband and soon he fell in love with our little town and our little family business too.
So last year, after 34 years of working hard and pouring their hearts into our community, Craig and Mary Ellen passed the business on to Dominic and myself. My family and I would like to thank everyone for 35 years of patronage and support. We're so genuinely grateful to be part of such a beautiful and loving community. Very sincerely, all of my love, Anna.
Thank you. And these buildings created a place for many businesses over the years in the past, like Majuri's, Cooper's Red and White, JSL Motors, Remus Menswear, Vanderplus 5 and $1. And it's given us lots in the present. Della Bella Boutique, Bonfire on Queen, Paisley Common, Definition Fitness, Tomboy Ice Cream, Soggy Suds, Soggy Stuff, and many more. Each business with its own story, like Allen's Home Hardware on its new location out on Highway 3. And also, who can forget the tireless efforts of volunteers like Max Johnson and his army of people who bring us Blues Fest every year for the last 10 years. Contributing to Paisley's ongoing enterprise and living heritage. And part 4. Part 5. The characters of Paisley, presented by Pat Kelly, esteemed storyteller and heritage keeper.
My introduction to Paisley was 1978. There were sort of two things that happened. I'd come out of law school with all kinds of book learning and no practical knowledge of any kind at all. And what I lacked in experience, I made up for in enthusiasm, which didn't count for much. I remembered as I was going to University of Waterloo, I lived about 2 miles off campus. Normally I would walk, but there was days when it would be raining or something unpleasant, and I would stick my thumb out on University Avenue. It's about 2 miles. And I remember getting a ride from a professor the one day, and you have to remember, University of Waterloo was very much math and science. So he's going through the various parts as to where I was. So engineering, no. Math, no. What? Arts. It's like I was a disappointment to my family. And there was that great sense of, that in due course people would get sick of supporting me and eventually I would find a job. I remembered that when I first came to Paisley. I was 25 years old, and suddenly people 3 times my age are calling me Mr. Kelly. And it's kind of just a complete transformation what happened over time. From my point of view, I'd much prefer you call me Pat. The important part in the early days, I didn't have a lot of work. So it was meet and greet and see the people. And one of the first places I stopped was the Majuri Barbershop. So it was the pool hall, it was Mickey's Petite Salon, and that was a magical place. First of all, it's like stepping back to about 1908, which is when everything would have gone in. And so in succession, Ted Ellis, Les Majuri, and in 1950, Lauren Majuri, age 16, started cutting hair. And the reason it was magical, it wasn't just a place for haircuts. It was gossip, it was politics, it was discussions, and every day was rich with all kinds of stuff that was going on. In between you'd hear the clip of the scissors or the buzz of the clippers as you went by, but it was a haven for certain people. One guy I knew was a widower, and he spent a lot of time alone. For him, that time was magical. He would spend hours just shooting the breeze with friends that had passed the day. Another guy, a farmer who had moved into Paisley and needed something to do, picked up on playing 8-ball and snooker. He became very proficient. My experience with Majuris in part was, though, that was also probably the biggest information source any place in the my first introduction, so-and-so, they said to me, so-and-so just bought a house. Yes. What did they pay for it? And I said, you know I can't say that. And about 30 seconds went by before I was sure that they weren't going to bar the door and stop me until I got out. The second occasion, a couple separated on a Sunday afternoon. The husband was into my office first thing on Monday morning, and he's laying out what he wants to do. He's going to transfer the house or the property to his wife, and we're talking through everything. The second he left, I went up the street to get the paper, and Lauren could fill me in on every detail of what had happened. And I was sweeping my office for bugs. I thought maybe they had and it was nothing of the sort. It was simply the Village Telegraph worked really well, and the news was out. One of the other things that occurred is they got more sophisticated over time as well. So they would do a variation on it. I hear so-and-so sold their property. Yes. I hear they got $900,000 for it. And then they'd all watch my face. I said, well, that would be a good price if that's what they got. Well, you didn't exactly say that that's what they got. No, I didn't. They got sick of me after a while. After that, they gave up. The things about Majuris, though, just the way they treated people. So there was an occasion when I would have, in my car, I have all three kids. Somebody has to go in and get the paper. I would send my son in, and he'd be back out in about 5 minutes. But of course, the thing was, they're chatting to him. He's enjoying the time. And he'd also have a wad of gum right about here, because they gave it all to him for free. And I don't know how they ever made any money, because all the kids in town were getting the same treatment. One of the things that was remarkable was that Lauren had the skill. In the early days, in the 50s, the haircuts were more or less the same, and the only challenge would be that people would arrange from being the fellow that had remembrances of having hair to somebody who was in the 1960s, where all of a sudden those mop tops from Liverpool and everybody wants to have the Beatles cut. And you'd have the parents saying, I want my money's worth and I want to get this haircut way back where, and the kid is saying, take about that much off the top, that's all I want. One of the things, I got talking to Mickey before I did this presentation, because I wanted her permission before I would share the stories, was she talked about, she said there was only one instance where they ever had a fight in there, and it was over pool, and Mickey's 4'11", and both these guys were 6-footers. And she just basically said, both of you are gone, you don't come back until you apologize. And the one guy came back and apologized, the other guy didn't. Years later, when Lauren died, the mother of the guy who apologized put something on the memorial that said, I don't know what he would have ever done without a pool. It was just something about the fabric of the town, how everything worked. The other part, Lauren and Mickey weren't terribly, they get paid for the pool, but it would be kind of a small amount. Kids would come to town, hockey tournaments all the time, so you'd have Pee-wee, Bantam, all the various ages. The one group of kids came from another town, I don't know which one it was. They played pool, they skipped out, they didn't pay. The coach found out, he marched them all back and made them apologize and also pay along the way. Two things that we will also remember about Mickey. One was she could make dessert that was wonderful. And if any of you could remember those butter tarts and how she would have raffles at Christmas time, and the Legion or whatever else would raffle off a dozen of Mickey's butter tarts, and everybody, oh, that's really great. This ties into a story. So Paisley Bantams one year were on fire. They are a really good team. They were competitive, and they're climbing the ladder, and the arena is packed. And everybody here is excited about the fact that this team is going places. And they keep climbing the various levels. They get to the provincial finals. Now this is where Mickey is doing the profit part of her anatomy. I'm not quite sure how that works. She basically, before the final game was done, she made a cake to celebrate, and it's just said on it, "Congratulations, boys." Now they hadn't won anything at that point, so the choice was either give the cake back or win the championship. They were provincial champions. One last thing, and sort of a memory that I have. Mickey was my tenant for a couple of years, and we would have this thing, you know, New Year's resolution where no more food. I've had enough. It's going to be carrots and celery. And then Mickey would be making something upstairs, and the smell would come down. And of course, the resolution went away. The other thing that happened was she planted a garden in the back, just some flowers and things like that. And I was mentioning to her when I saw her that there were still vestiges of that left. So there was still, the rose bush was still there, and the peony bush still prospers. Every spring the tulips and daffodils pop up to greet the spring and remind the world that Mickey was here and the Majuris live on.
Thanks, Pat. That was great. I definitely have memories of Majuri's pool hall and barbershop. Growing up here in Paisley, the number one thing you could look forward to as a youngster was turning 13 and finally being able to bypass that half wall between the barbershop and the billiards hall. You couldn't do it without a signed note from your mom or your dad. As a person who grew up and was born in late November, I had to watch every single one of my friends get that note and sneak over to the good side of things while I had to just like bide my time over in the gumballs in the chip section, like maybe leafing through a copy of Mad Magazine until I'd read so much that Lorne made me buy it. Anyway, just before we move on to anything else, I just wondered if anyone had a little anecdote about Majuri's barber shop or pool hall that might resonate with them at all. You, sir, there.
Mickey's still alive and well at the Care Center in Southampton. Many years ago, when my first cousin turned 50, I hired Mickey to make 50 butter tarts because George Campbell couldn't walk by a butter tart without eating it. She made the 50 tarts, we had the birthday party, and she did not take 1 penny for those tarts.
That's amazing. I love it. Okay. I'm not going to clang the bell this time. Kind of moving into something a little more serious. Part 6. Paisley Royal Canadian Legion Branch 295 to be of service.
After your words have healed,
What a beautiful song, and what wonderful, wonderful singing. It's not just a song, it's the way it's performed, wonderful. I'm Moiken Penner, I'm the Paisley Ward Council, and I'm here to bring greetings from the municipality and let you know that the mayor and the deputy mayor sent their regrets. They couldn't make it today. And I'd also like to just, I'm just so impressed by all these people here. It's just wonderful to see everybody and to really see that this community is coming together to enjoy this play made by the community. So I'd like to thank all the people who participate and also the organizers, Samuel and Alan. It's just such a privilege to be here. So I'm also part of the play, and I'm also known as Captain Penner when I'm on duty with the Canadian Armed Forces. So I'm a training officer with the Royal Canadian Air Cadets Squadron in King Carden, and the Air Cadets is a cadet program. It's for youth from 12 to 18 years. And the cadets, they have a unique opportunity there to build life skills and knowledge to help them pave their way to adulthood. And so as a training officer, I create lesson plans and I organize field trips, and I also teach lessons on Monday nights when we meet. So I love seeing the cadets grow and become more confident and become engaged Canadian citizens. So we are trying to instill military values and in our young people, and this helps them to remember that we are privileged to live in Canada, in this wonderful country. So I'm particularly happy to participate in this part about the Legion, in this part of the play. Because every Canadian has been impacted by the death or serious disablement of a loved one in the Great War of 1914 to 1918.
And though we appear to have lived through a time of relative peace since the end of World War II,
There have been in reality a series of smaller yet no less serious conflicts and peacekeeping missions.
And all of them involve the Canadian Armed Forces.
The Paisley Royal Canadian Legion Branch 295 was formed in 1939 to remember these people who gave their lives. One such veteran who did this for us was the beloved Dr. Don Milne, with innumerable ties to Paisley. He was born in 1908, and he was raised on a 150-acre farm on the 8th concession of Brant Township. He studied medicine at the University of Toronto and moved to Cargill to set up his practice in 1934 upon graduation. Before being enlisted, he married Miss Jean Mutry. He enlisted in 1941 at CFB Clinton as a flight lieutenant with the Royal Canadian Air Force, and he was trained in top secret radar operations that were influential in the outcome of World War II. After the service, Jean and Don moved to Paisley and set up practice in the Big Yellow House on Queen Street. As we all know, that's an iconic building on our main street. We had the privilege of meeting his family. So they started their family with 2 sons. Jim was born in 1946 and Doug in 1951. And this is what they'd like you to know about their father. Shouldn't have looked at Doug Milne. Dr. Milne was always busy. Dr. Milne always wore a 3-piece suit. And Dr. Milne was very competitive in sports, namely curling and lawn bowling. And as the story goes, Don went off to Elora for a lawn bowling competition with George Grant. Apparently they won a dining room suite, and nobody in the family can remember that furniture making it back to either of their houses. Dr. Milne was very dedicated to his patients, so much so that on occasions when he was expecting and anticipating a call coming in during the night, he would sleep on the sofa downstairs in the front hall so as not to wake his family through the night. While he was practicing and treating patients in the home office, the boys were shooting pucks against the office wall. Until they were shooed away, Don took those boys to the arena regularly. He was soon given the job of team doctor, and not only did he stitch up the home team, but he often stitched up the visiting team as well. Keep your elbows up. Dr. Milne was a proud Legion member for over 60 years at this very Legion, Paisley. Thank you.
And there are many other Paisley area residents who served. And as we researched them,
all their experiences, their actions, their words
connect together to become easy to imagine letters that any one of them
could have or would have written,
telling of their bitter experiences,
telling of their returns to war,
writing home to the families.
Mom, I can't tell you how much I miss you and Dad and the girls. Is Charlie still chewing up the old pillows on the front porch, wagging his tail the whole time?
I can't tell you how much I want to come home. When the job is done here, I will never complain about heat paying again.
At first I thought the French fields were like home, but they're not. Once the bombing started, they're not like anything we know at home.
But you mustn't worry about me. I have memories of Saturday nights in town, getting ice cream arm in arm up and down Queen Street.
Mom, I find it hard to remember what day of the week it is. What's the date? Is this 1944?
The Brits are using us to spearhead many advances. There's so much I want to tell you.
Oh, humanity has advanced here to make killing faster and easier.
No lying in filth till gangrene rots you away.
A split second and an arm is blown off or torsos are scattered like manure on the fields.
Is there life before death?
Is there life before death?
Is there life before death?
And Mum, you know, I've been home for a few months and the 80s are rolling out and Mr. Trudeau has taken his final walk in the snow. I'm not avoiding you. It's just on certain days. On certain days.
I start to shake overhearing people in the grocery store arguing loudly.
Or get angry watching some young guys badmouth someone else for parking too close.
Oh, God! What am I going to do?
What's going to become of me?
Will I ever fit in again?
After the greatest bloodshed in Western society's so-called civilized history, there's barely
the murmur, it seems, in our contemporary society.
A world that owes its very existence to all those who fought and lost,
to all the families that grieve,
and to the thousands of hours of labor in support.
Well, I can't tell you how much I miss you and Dad and the girls.
Just a boy, now a man, far from home.
Surrounded by many, now alone.
In the fight of his life.
He will lose in winning.
Our Paisley Royal Canadian Legion Branch 295 works every day preserving the legacy and the accomplishments of veterans and active service members. Launching every fall its Poppy campaign to raise funds in support of various charities.
Their struggles and pursuits are our struggles and pursuits as citizens.
To promote the well-being of our communities and to fight intolerance wherever and whenever it happens.
The spirits of those we love and lose live in our hearts forever.
You are in our hearts.
Forever. Part 7. Paisley, the Collectors.
This is Jim McCullough's barn. Jim began farming, but after being gored by a heifer, decided to do something different.
At the same time that I was gored with the heifer, Shell Canada was looking for an agent to come to Paisley to look after their Shell agency. And being as my wife had done books for another Shell agent, right away she said, yes, we'll take it. And that's how we got into Paisley. My uncle in Elmford went to the Toronto Exhibition and had bought in 1938 and had bought a co-op to run the mill in Elmford and grade the roads in Annabelle Township. So from that day onward, I always liked the co-op because it would go so fast and that. And then In 77, when we moved to Paisley, we started to travel a little bit, and so I wanted to find a co-op, so that's where it all started, buying the first co-op in 89, and it's expanded since then.
And this is, of course, the treasure chest, the dream, as Judy McKinnon, the present museum's lead volunteer, recently said of Norman Hagedorn.
When they were building the two-story block, the workers uncovered a small white tombstone. It's mounted inside the museum with the inscription, James Thomas, infant son of James and Esther Steele, died the 2nd day of April, 1862, age 3 months, 26 days. Mr. Steele was a prominent businessman in Paisley.
Norman began collecting local artifacts in the 1940s so that his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren would see the articles that families used to live with back in the late 1800s and early 1900s. In 1982, with over 2,000 artifacts in their home, shelf upon shelf in every room, they decided to donate everything to the village of Paisley. While they waited for council to decide, Norman built a 2-story cement block building next to his house. Like Jim McCullough, a man who cared about his community, and to this day both are heritage figures that enhance every aspect of life in Paisley through their volunteer service.
Part 8 of Floods and Art and the Paisley Central School Choir, which I'd like to invite up here now. But, as most of us here tonight know, the river's not always your friend here in Paisley. And up until the building of the dikes in the late 1970s and early 1980s, Paisley flooded every single spring, the worst of which happened in April of 1929.
Early one Friday morning that April, Stark's Mill and part of their dam was partially swept down.
All roads into town were flooded, and by Saturday night, the water from the Teeswater was pouring into businesses on Queen Street.
And Riverside Park was completely flooded by Tuesday, and all the smaller buildings were toppled over.
And while we're on the subject of buildings being toppled over, arenas have always been an integral part of the heritage here in Paisley.
The original arena of James Dewar was behind present-day Soggy Suds, and it had its roof collapse from snow in 1918.
And with the Rotary taking the lead, the money was raised. And the new arena opened in the early 1920s with 2,000 people attending opening night.
1 week later, the arena was razed to the ground by fire.
And again, the Rotary, this time with the Legion, raised the money.
And the new memorial arena was built 2 years later.
Our village has a long history of service clubs, and I mean our own Rotary Club's been in existence since 1938. And all of its activities are based on the idea of service over self. From the just mentioned arenas to the recently funded and built splash pad here in Paisley. Speaking of which, I'll take a minute here to profile that with one of our guest speakers.
Quite Nancy, we have so many wonderful volunteers helping with her, from laying soap to our various fundraising efforts. Every person who showed up for even one meeting was a big help on the success to the project.
It took 18 months from start to grand opening. 18 months of regular meetings, site visits, lots and lots of phone calls, texts, and emails.
The longest process was waiting on the approvals from the Saugeen Valley.
But we did it with the support of our amazing community and 5 members of the community. The biggest challenge was the $300,000 we had to raise in those few months.
But we did it with the support of our amazing community and 5 members executive committee. We owe success to this village.
And by the way, some of the youth that you're seeing here in and around the play are actually members of Paisley Central School's Rotary Interact Club. And they're going to give us a little bit of a rundown on another successful community initiative, our Paisley 150 Homecoming.
If you were fortunate enough to attend our Paisley 150th Homecoming in early July.
The great dances, the inflatable kids, the incredible parade with 131 participants, the 28 games at the cornhole tournament, or the ample breakfast.
You would be right to think a large organization with deep pockets had organized the event.
But in reality, it was a small group of 11 mothers led by Kayla McClellan,
who had already organized themselves in 2022 into the Community Enhancement Committee.
to pay attention to our operating our local
Since they intend to carry on enhancing the village amenities and other projects.
benefit is not only the onward and but the future of the village as well.
I believe I'm going to introduce the Paisley Concert Choir and the Paisley School Choir to sing a rendition of Paisley Our Home, which was written by Lewis Kaufman and his mother Marjorie to celebrate the Paisley Centennial in 1974. And you should be thankful because the original plan was to have you guys sing along with it. So please enjoy this rendition. All right. That was a lovely little ditty. Speaking of lovely little ditties, I'd like to welcome our old pal John Leader to the stage to sing us something. Good there? Thank you. Hey.
Great to be here. Nice to see all you folks tonight.
Hi, John.
Homecoming. Found a song about coming home. And it was written by a famous Scottish folk singer named Louis McLean, so it fits right in.
Sounds Scottish.
I get it. I don't know if you can see the changes that have come over me in these last few years. I've been afraid that I might drift away. So I've been telling old stories and singing songs make me think about where I came from, and that's the reason why I feel so far away today. So let me tell you that I love you, that I think about you all the time. Paisley, you're calling. Now I'm going home. And if I should become a stranger, you know that it would make me more than sad. Paisley's been everything I've ever had. I have moved, and I've kept on moving, prove the points that I needed proving. I've lost the friends that I needed losing, but I found others on the way. I have kissed the leaves and left them crying, stolen dreams, yes, there's no denying. I have traveled, sometimes with conscience flying, somewhere in the wind. So let me tell you that I love you, that I think about you all the time. Paisley, you're calling, and now I'm going home. And if I should become a stranger, you know that it would make me more than sad. Paisley's been everything I've ever had. Now I'm sitting here before the fire, the empty room and the forest choir, and the flames that couldn't get any higher, they went down the dawn. But I'm steady thinking, my way is clear, and I know what I will do tomorrow, when the hands are shaking and the kisses flow. Well, I will drift away. So let me tell you that I love you, that I think about you all the time. Paisley, you're calling, and now I'm going home. And if I should become a stranger, you know that it would make me more than sad. 'Cause Paisley, you're everything I've ever had.
Thank you, John. What a lovely little ditty. All of these residents and groups make an art out of living and service in their community. And speaking of art, this brings us to a section of our evening where I'd like to introduce a local artist, Anne Fauchon.
Hi, I'm Anne, and I'm an artist. Easy to say, though I struggled for years to accept the name, to accept that I am. I guess it's hard to say why I create or how I create in any depth, and depth has always been important to me. Some say it's like magic, magic to see in depth. What is constant is the voice inside whispering, "This is something you have to do." Or insisting, "Keep going, keep drawing, keep painting." I have no choice. The colors, the lights, the textures, they enchant me, crackling inside of me like electricity. So I work to share that magic, entering enchantment to enter making. And over the years, I've worked in clay and ink, paste and paper, pencil and paint. And what's it all about? I don't know. The closest I get is that it's about trying to create a connection between me and all of you. It's about standing still, alone, afraid, and trusting and allowing and becoming and connecting to the divine within. Thoughts and feelings no longer at odds or at war, like the good and bad you find in almost anything. Made visible, connected, and healing. In any person, in any presence, or any possibility. That depth I was talking about, the magic.
Thank you, Anne. We're getting close. We're getting close. Just give us a brief moment to set up a couple of things here. And then
so, from what I hear, Teeswater Bridge work will be finished up next month. And then we can finally get back to normal.
I was beginning to forget what that felt like. So if there's no other business, can we have a motion for adjournment? Moved by Julius, seconded by Thomas, all in favor?
here.
Meeting is adjourned.
Well, that's a pretty good start to our 150th anniversary. Should be fun.
Listen, I found this old fellow wandering around outside. He's on the construction site, it's not safe. I'm here, we hooked up to get outside and get the job done.
Yeah, we're just wrapping up the council meeting here. We did that.
There you go, sir. You got to keep it.
Oh, I didn't mean any harm. I'm just curious on how they build bridges these days.
Excuse me, sir. Do you happen to have a wallet on you, a driver's license, health card, some sort of ID?
I don't think I know what those things are, and I don't seem to have a wallet. Did you need some money?
No, I don't need any money, sir. We're just trying to figure out who you are and where you belong.
Well, I guess you could say I belong right here. And you might have heard of me.
Are you famous?
Well, I don't know about that. My name's Samuel Rowe.
Samuel Rowe, as in co-founder of Paisley.
Oh, the very one.
Excuse us just for a minute there, Sam. We need to have a talk here.
Hey guys, look what I just pulled up on my phone. It says that Samuel Rowe died in 1904, and he's buried in the Paisley Cemetery.
This guy looks pretty alive to me. I don't know who he thinks he is, but I sure as hell know he isn't Samuel Rowe. I'm going to go outside and see if I can find somebody that will claim him here, and if I can't find anybody, I'll call the police.
Well, you go, and we'll pretend to listen to his stories.
Humor him, and I'll get some help.
Excuse me, sir, I couldn't help it over here. What's your name?
Thomas.
You seem to doubt me. Doubting Thomas?
Yeah.
What exactly don't you believe?
Well, I find it hard to believe that somebody that has been dead for nearly 120 years would just suddenly show up to supervise bridge construction.
You believe in ghosts, Thomas?
Certainly not.
Neither do I, but as you can see, here I am, large as life.
I gotta get some air.
I think Thomas needs to collect himself.
How'd you get here, Sam?
Oh, I came by raft.
You came by raft from where?
From Rogue's Hollow. I believe they call it Walkerton now.
So you hopped on a raft, floated down the Saugeen River just to come and visit our bridge construction?
Well, not exactly. I came with my wife Mary Ann and my two girls, aged 7 and 3. There were actually 2 rafts. I'd hired some men with experience on the Ottawa River. We had all my worldly goods, enough lumber for a tavern, and 14 head of cattle.
Are the cattle with you now?
Oh no, the rafts and the cattle are long gone now.
Oh, good. You'd hate to have them wandering in the streets.
Quite.
So whose idea was it for you to come
Oh,
here?
that would be Mary Ann's brother Simon. He's the one who had the dream.
Dream?
Yes, he dreamt of a place where 2 rivers came together, a place where our families could start fresh and prosper.
Are you talking about Simon Orchard, the other co-founder
Yes,
of Paisley?
the very one. The plan was for both our families to push off together, but it didn't work out that way. Simon pushed off on the 18th of April, but our little son Henry got sick, and he died. We had to bury him in Rogue's Hollow. We didn't leave until the 9th of May. The water was high that day. It was cool and overcast, and a swift current hurried us along. We were very glad to have the 2 raftsmen with us as we kept getting hung up on sandbars. You know, have you ever tried to shift 14 cattle around on a raft to get free of a sandbar?
I can't imagine.
Huh. But even, I think my Mary Ann heard a few new words that day. But even so, it was a good run past miles of spruce and pine trees, huge stands of elm and maple, so broad 2 men couldn't put their arms around them. We made the 20-mile trip to Mud River by early afternoon.
Mud River?
Yes, that's what they called it before it got its more genteel name, the Teeswater.
Mud River, what was it like when you arrived?
Let me tell you, we were truly amazed. You see, we had drifted to where the 2 rivers met, just as Simon had seen in his dream. There's no one here. We were the first. Maybe a few 3-log cabins in Walkerton, 1 log cabin in Southampton at the time, maybe a few shacks along the Durham Road. That was it.
So no one to help you. No one to help you for miles and miles.
Truly, there was no folks back home thought we were truly mad, and perhaps we were. Why would you leave the safety and security of England to shiver in some log shack through a long Canadian winter? But we were dreamers too. We dreamt of a place where we could own our own land, a place where we didn't have to worry about the landlord kicking us off when the lease expired. That's what brought us. A slightly mad bunch of dreamers prepared to do anything, suffer anything for a better life.
You followed a dream. What did you find when you got here?
Well, when we got here, we kind of expected that Simon would be living in a tent or a shanty at best. But when we get here, we find that he's got a complete log cabin built.
How did he manage that?
Well, shortly after he arrived, the surveyor crew came through, and they helped him erect his cabin. I tell you, we were very glad to sit in Simon and Lily Ann's new cabin by the fire after a long day on the river.
So did you get a cabin up too?
Yes, by the end of 1851, we had a log cabin built and a shelter for the cattle. Simon and I had agreed that he would work to the north of the river, and I would work to the south.
So you were pretty well set that first year.
Well, not quite. You see, we hadn't had time to plant grain or harvest hay for the cattle, so that was a big question. But we'd learned that the cattle could browse on treetops, so we each hired a man to cut treetops through the winter. And it's a good thing we did. That winter, the snow was so deep, it was 5 feet deep in the bush, and didn't leave the swamps until June the next year.
Tell me, did the cattle survive?
Yes, they survived on their diet of treetops.
I can't imagine how cold and boring that winter would have been.
Well, we had each other, understand? And my Mary Ann was expecting. We had Simon and Lily Ann and their family. And of course, we spent a lot of time planning.
Planning what?
Rose Tavern, of course. We finished it in 1852. It was 30 feet by 24 feet with 2 lean-tos, one for a kitchen and one for a dining room. Used up all my lumber to build it. And we were pretty well set, except for clientele. But that didn't take long, because about a month later that summer, John Valentine arrived with 2 workmen to build a sawmill. Unfortunately, About a month later, one of the workmen died.
What happened?
Well, we had no lumber. We had to tear up the floorboards from our cabin and bring a man down from Washington to build a coffin. And we gave our friend proper Christian burial.
Amazing.
No sign of anybody to claim our friend. They called the police, and they're busy dealing with another call. They said they're going to be at least another half an hour. I thought you guys are cleaning up this mess, Lena. So Sam been entertaining you?
Oh yes, he sure seems to know a lot about the earlier days here.
So Sam, you mentioned you had some previous experience with bridges.
Oh, yes. Mostly here on the Teeswater and the Saugeen.
Just a minute, the Teeswater Bridge that was just replaced, it was built in 1935. That's like 88 years ago. Even if you're only 18 at the time, that would make you 106.
I never said I was involved in building that bridge.
Well, thank heavens for that.
No, my bridges were much earlier.
What?
Actually, Simon was the main bridge builder. I only helped. Our first bridge was made of logs and spanned the Teeswater, connecting our two cabins north and south. But we didn't have enough clearance there, and then in the spring, the high water and ice washed it out.
What did you do?
Oh, we relied on Danger.
I don't understand.
Well, Danger was Simon's dog. He could swim the river from one side to the other. We'd attach messages around his collar, and that saved us from getting our feet wet, until we get around to the second bridge, which we did directly. The second bridge was made of lumber, and it started just on the south side of the Teeswater here, and went across almost to Church Street. Now, it had more clearance, but high water and ice were always a problem. I understand you just about lost your bridge a couple of years ago.
Oh yes, 2018. The water rose within inches of the span. And then we thought the ice might shift it, and we would have been done for.
Yep, firemen on the bridge, putting poles down to move the ice under the bridge. It was a close call.
And would you believe it? People were on the bridge taking pictures, if you can imagine.
Well, enough about bridges. I want to talk about my tavern. As I was saying, business was pretty slow in those first few days. Actually, yes, that all changed in 1854 with the big land sale up in Southampton. And I must say that we did a little land office business of our own here. All those settlers from the southern townships had to pass by our door on the way up to Southampton. And my Mary Ann was ready for them. She'd sent out 2 huge maple syrup cauldrons, one full of potatoes and the other full of an entire ox, except the tail, of course. As those settlers passed by our door, we just dig up more potatoes or butcher another ox. Oddly, we never ran out of ale.
How did you manage to have enough ale on hand?
There would have been hundreds of pass-through.
Well, closer to thousands, and a good publican never gives up the secrets.
So things had picked up?
Yes, they had. That function, that tavern filled a lot of functions in those early days. John Murdoch, he was an editor of the Paisley Advocate at one time. He wrote a little poem. I carry it with me. Perhaps you'd like to read it.
No church within the dark green shades, nor traffic in the dim arcades. But Rowe's Hotel, like Indian Fort, was a church and school and store and court, while strangers passed from wood to wood and wished to know where Paisley stood. That's charming.
It's also a sore point too. When Simon's brother Thomas opened up the first post office in Paisley in town in February 1st of 1854, guess what some faceless office clerk chose as a name? Paisley.
Paisley.
Simon and I were from Cornwall. That's in the extreme southwest of England. How does this guy get to choose? Have you ever heard of anything so foolish as choosing the name Paisley? Anyway, that's 500 miles north of where we grew up. 500 miles full of place names that would have been more meaningful to us. I came to accept it in time, but I would have preferred Roseboro. Ever have problems dealing with the government?
Doesn't everybody?
Oh, it was the same with us.
Simon and I had been on site for 5 years since 1851, and we hadn't got any land patents. I think that they promised them to someone else, actually. We make a couple of trips to Toronto, nothing. Finally, we go all the way to Quebec City. That was the capital of Upper and Lower Canada at the time. Finally, we get our land patents. By that time, finally we get our land patents.
That must have been a real pain in the ass.
Yes, it was. By that time, the surveyor had surveyed Paisley and filed the plans. At that time, there were 36 buildings, including 3 sawmills, 1 grist mill, 1 school, and my tavern. And then things took off as homesteaders started pouring in. We had folks speaking umpteen different languages and dialects. You know, if you listen to them on the street, you could barely understand them. We had Scots, Highland Scots and Lowland Scots speaking, some speaking Gaelic to the Irish who spoke the same. We had Germans, some speaking High German, some Low German, and then the odd Frenchman too. You know, if you stopped to listen to the homesteaders on the street, it was like the Tower of Babel. By the way, I've been listening to your accents, and you know, I can't quite place them. Where are you all from?
Well, right here in Paisley. I guess you'd call this a Canadian accent, eh?
Well, that's extraordinary. From all those voices, I like it.
It must have been hard for everyone homesteading back then.
Well, homesteading could break your heart, you know. The first spring we were here, Simon's 4 cattle came down to the river to drink, and the ice they were standing on broke and gave way, and they were swept down the river. And like in an instant, a good portion of his accumulated wealth is gone.
How do you get that back?
Well, you do what you have to do.
It's getting late. Why don't we just clean up our mess here and we can wait for help downstairs? There's probably an air conditioner down there.
You know, that reminds me of Janet Fisher Walker. She and her husband James came to Galt on a train, and from Galt they took a wagon up to Durham. From Durham they walked to Walkerton. From Walkerton they caught a ride up to Dunkeld, where they met a cousin who guided them through the blazed trail to Paisley. That's what it was like in those days. The roads were surveyed, but the brush hadn't been cleared yet. And it wasn't until the mid-1860s, after the brush had been cleared, that the county finally got around to laying gravel on the roads. No, the Durham Road ran 45 miles from Durham to Kincardine. There's an old joke about that road. There was only one mud puddle on the whole road, but it ran the whole distance.
Yes, but what about Janet?
Oh yes, Janet. She and her husband James built a house over on what's now Goldie Street. To get to the main settlement, they had to use a raft and a pole to get over here, and that became much more difficult in the winter. And then James dies. There she is, a widow with 2 small children and no means to support them. So you know what she does? She gets a rowboat and she starts a ferry business. Anybody who wants passage across the other side goes down to the river, rings a bell, and she will come across and ferry them across for a couple of pennies. There she is, year after year, struggling, trying to earn her way for her family, plus cooking, cleaning, laundry, mending, and keeping a garden to feed her small family.
She had it tough, but she did what she had to do.
She did what she had to do. In 1859, Simon and I built a bridge across the Saugeen, connecting that with the rest of the village. By then, Janet had remarried. A fellow from North Greenock named William Houston.
Men to the rescue.
Are you married, Julia?
I was, but I lost my husband 3 years ago.
I'm so sorry to hear that. I lost my wife. I buried 2 wives. I know how hard that is.
But I don't need to remarry.
Yes, you must understand, in those days, being a husband or wife was a full-time job. And take one of them away, and the job to work and raise a family become extraordinarily difficult. I lost my first wife, Mary Ann, in 1844, giving birth to our daughter. I named our daughter after her mother. There I was in Durham with limited means and a small child to raise. You know, the neighbors helped, but I couldn't depend on them to raise the child. I managed for 3 years and then I remarried. And my daughter was much better off with a stepmother to raise her at that point. And can you guess what my new wife's name was?
Mary Ann?
Yeah, you guessed it. My marriage to Mary Ann Orchard was an economic necessity.
Tough decisions.
Yes, it was a fortunate one for us. I think they've torn down my hotel. Yeah,
The plan is to put up apartments.
You know, I was so proud of that place. Think of it. We've been here 11 years, and then I'm building with bricks.
Where'd you get the bricks?
We got the bricks from the clay pit above the Fisher Dam. There's no shortage of clay in these parts. Think of it. 2 full stories, lots of room, lots of space, rooms for travelers. She was a beauty in her day. I'm sad to see the old girl gone, but that's the price that progress demands. I do like the new construction. Looks quite attractive, though.
We are so fortunate. The architect is committed to replicating the facade right down to the lintels above the window. The hotel will live on.
What is keeping that officer? Seems there's never a cop around when you need one.
Sounds like you've had a few bad experiences with the government, Thomas.
You could say that.
Well, I have a story about politics, corruption, and scheming. Are you interested?
Just shoot me. Go ahead.
It concerns the selection of the county town.
And the jet.
Take a look at this map.
How about this one?
Check out the southeastern corner. This orphan piece down in the southeastern corner. 7 miles to Grey County, 12 miles to Huron. Rather poor pick for a county seat in a county that runs 110 miles north to south and 30 miles east to west. Wouldn't you agree? Now, take a look at where we're standing now. Can you see it there? Right in the middle? What do you see?
We're more central.
Exactly. We're closer to 80% of the people living in the Bruce. If you were picking a county town, would that not make a better choice? Of course it would. We had geography on our side, and most people agreed.
What happened?
Well, I'll just tell you what happened. The decision to name, it's 1863, and the decision to name the county town had been delayed for 7 years. But Paisley was the clear favorite. Now, 2 councillors from Kincardine switched their vote and moved that Walker to be named the county seat. And the motion carries on the strength of those 2 changed votes. I tell you, those votes were bought and paid for. Anyway, land is purchased in Walkerton for the county buildings. An architect is hired. But the warden, James Brocklebank, refuses to sign the contract. God bless him. So council then proceeds to declare a plebiscite to see who will, what's the county town will be. You know, any town that gets a majority of the vote, a clear majority of the vote, will become the new county town. The vote was held in September of 1864. And the results are for Paisley, 1,652, for Kincardine, 1,403, and Walkerton finally at 1,110. Paisley led Walkerton by 542 votes.
Except no clear majority.
Yes, unfortunately. Now, despite that, the council goes and moves that Paisley should be the county seat. Land is purchased again, and the architect returns. And all of that is undone by a new council vote in 1865 of 13-10. That motion is passed, and Walkerton passed in Parliament, and Walkerton becomes the new county seat. I tell you, it was dirty dealings that made that happen. They don't call it Rogues Hollow for nothing.
Easy, old timer. We don't need you blowing a gasket.
It was dirty dealings, I tell you.
When did you say that happened?
1865.
Well, at some point you just got to let it go.
Well, but not just that. Oh, what are you doing?
I'm sharing a video of you on WhatsApp.
What's that?
Oh, something I can share information with my friends with.
We had something like that in my day. We called it the tidings tree.
A tidings tree?
The tidings tree was a huge elm tree on the north side of the Teeswater River. It was right down by the water, and actually Simon had tied his raft to it when he arrived here in 1851. Folks would post notices on there, things like details of a barn raising or directions for new settlers coming into the area so that they could locate friends and family. My favorite was the matrimonial market.
What did they say?
Oh, it actually let people know who was looking, but you ask what they say. I have a few here if you're interested to read them.
Come on.
Mandy and Julia.
Initials HM. Bachelor on the shady side of 40. Not a declared candidate for the honors of some good woman's husband, but not losing time in entering the lists.
Initials CM Merchant. Young as bachelors go, dark-haired, whiskers to match, getting better looking each day, and a disposition that is most lovable, cultured, genius, kind-hearted, and a popular gentleman, hoping not to turn his 40th post in single heart.
Who can resist?
Hey, then there's initial KM. He's barefooted on the top of his head, wears a full beard, the half the bachelor's envy. He carries $10,000 in his sock. He may be induced to surrender his warm heart into wifely keeping.
A little financial incentive to go with that warm heart.
Yes, it was a bit of fun. The tree declined in use after the Advocate opened in 1865.
That's all fine, Sam, but there's no way that you possibly saw any of this.
Hey, lighten up on Sam. It's not doing you any harm.
Well, no harm but keeping us here all damn night.
Keep talking, Sam. We think your stories are great.
You guys go ahead, keep drinking the Kool-Aid.
June 7th, 1872. June 7th, 1872. Simon and I had been in town for 21 years, and the first locomotive rolls into town. There was no station, of course, but that would come. And by August that year, we had passenger service running. And with the coming of the telegraph, we were connected to the world. We learned about things that happened in Canada, the United States, and the world the next day. The Advocate was full of stories from around the world. For a generation of pioneers who had done without, suddenly, anything that the world made could be shipped right here. Wives who had worn homespun all their lives could now have a brand new store-bought dress. Washing machines, hay mowers, hats, shoes, socks, whatever, all could be purchased. It was wonderful.
So everybody discovered shopping.
Well, yes, but we still watched our money, of course, and but we could ship our lumber and our grain to the rest of the world, and we had in some small measure disposable cash. These were exciting times. It's a pity that Simon didn't live to see them.
What happened to Simon?
Oh, it was some kind of an ulcer, I believe. He died the year after the railroad arrived. He was only 49.
That's way too young.
Yes. He was a friend as much as a brother-in-law. Talented bridge builder. Brushed out miles of road allowances so that the settlers could get in. More's the pity that he didn't live to see us in an amalgamated village.
That was January 1864?
Yes. We were 1,038 souls by then. By 1881, we were 1,558. But you know what the crowning glory was? This building, this place, our very own town hall. All the local trades got together, the bricklayers, the masons, the carpenters, and gave their very best so that we could have this place. Almost 150 years, and the old girl still sparkles. The curved windows, the belfry, the curved staircase that you all climbed to get here today, the curved lath and plaster ceiling that you see, the excellent sound in this theater. We wanted the best, and we got it.
someplace that you donated the land for the town hall.
Yes, but can you keep a secret?
It wasn't mine to give,
Well,
Sam.
okay. It wasn't mine to give. It wasn't mine to give. We kind of designed Simon and I had made the plans for the village, and this section here kind of got omitted. We built the town hall here, and after 150 years, I'm not going to make them move it.
Sam, you know so much about those early days.
Well, I ought to. I lived through them.
Why do you encourage him? Sam here's a nice old man, but the fact that he believes he's Samuel Rowe doesn't mean you have to buy into it.
Thomas, there are some things in this world that are not as they appear. Yet, you must use your senses. What do your eyes tell you? Here I am.
Well, Sam, you tell a good story, and I've come to like you, but I just can't buy into your particular brand of dementia. I don't know who you are, but I sure as hell know you aren't Samuel Rowe.
As you wish.
I'm going to go check on that officer.
I think Thomas needs an injection of faith.
Share more with us, Sam. Well, before he comes back.
Yes, to wrap up, the years passed and my family prospered. I sold the tavern in 1877. I was 58, and after 25 years, I was ready for a break. My girls grew up and married. Elizabeth went to Seattle. Julia to Gravenhurst. Marianne and Eliza and Emma all married and stayed in Paisley. But you know what I think of? It's those old days. Those days of struggle and cold and unbelievable hard work. Those were good days too. We were all so young and full of hope and dreams. We shared what we had, and what we didn't have, we did without. We were close with our neighbors. We had great celebrations. And I have to ask you now, for all your conveniences and improvements, are you any happier now?
Good question. To tell you the truth, I'm not sure. I think you got a point there, Sam.
Sam, please continue.
Season followed season, and the years passed. My Marianne died in 1893. We'd been married 46 years. I lived alone for a while, and then my Julia had me move in with her. She was better at the cooking and laundry than I was. And then, as Deb told you earlier, I died in 1904. I was 85 years old. I'm just buried in the cemetery east of here.
This is getting super strange.
It's just part of life.
Glad you're finally able to get here, officer. Like I was saying, he's old, he's delusional. Nice old man, but he's in need of care.
What do we do now?
Yeah, I hope they're going to be gentle with our Sam.
Yeah.
Where'd he go?
He was just here.
Just here.
Sam,
I'll check downstairs.
where'd he go? He's not here.
Well, you can't
look.
you can't just disappear.
Here, not here.
We can't just disappear.
He left a card. It's the obituary of Samuel Rowe. His hospitality and kindness to traveler and settler in the early days was not a matter of mere business. To many a man, the needful meal was given without compensation, and the struggling farmer attempting to clear their holding on capital that was less than scant did not go to him for assistance without having it given to him in a generous way.
There's a note on the back.
There's a note on the back.
Wishing you every success as you celebrate the 150th anniversary of the village of Paisley. All my best, Sam.
I don't believe it.
All right, we're nearly there. Part 10, the play with no ending. It's a term of reference. one last introduction to the Paisley Concert Choir. They're a pretty fantastic group of people, and if you haven't had a chance to take in one of their performances, you're in luck. On November 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, they'll be performing at the United?
On the 24th, we're at the United Church. On the 23rd, we're in Owen Sound at St. Andrews. And on the 22nd, we're in Hanover at the Red Lutheran Church.
Amazing. Are you ready?
To sing?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Lay it on us,
Always
Linda.
ready to sing.
Gymnastics. Yeah. I missed that wonderful section at the end there.
I dreamed of rain and the rains came, soft and easy, sweet and clear. I dreamed of rain and the rains came, and peace spread over the land. I dreamed of summer and the winds changed, and the green was easy and the rivers ran clear. I dreamed of summer and the winds changed, and peace spread over the land. And the flowers bloom in the desert, and the air is fresh and clear. I dreamed of rain and the rains came, and peace spread over the land. I dreamed of freedom and the moon rose, and the way was easy and the path was clear. I dreamed of freedom and the moon rose, and peace spread over the land. And the golden stars are shining, and the night is bright and clear. I dreamed of freedom and the moon rose, and peace spread over the land. I dreamed of heaven and the earth sang, and the song was easy, the song was clear. I dreamed of heaven and the earth sang, and peace spread over the land. And the ancient pain is forgotten, and the Father's debts are clear. I dreamed of heaven and the earth sang. Peace spread over the land. I dreamed of rain and the rains came. I dreamed of rain and the rains
And so, this is part 10, the community play with no ending. And there's no ending because, well, we, all of us on stage and all of you here, you're the ending.
Paisley will become whatever we do next with that heritage of hard work and overcoming challenges.
And someday, some of the things that we do will become heritage for those who come behind us. Those residents of the past we've highlighted tonight are people just like ourselves who step forward from their busy lives to make this village what it is.
And we're not talking about how they chose to characterize Paisley or how we brand ourselves today. We could talk about that from our various perspectives till the cows come home, as they say.
What we're talking about here tonight is how we inspire each other to bring our best selves to our family, friends, and neighbors so we can all live fulfilling and productive lives.
And as we all know, leading a fulfilling life isn't based solely on income and wealth, though both cause ceaseless worry.
Living a good life is based on finding opportunities to use and develop our abilities and talents in generative activities.
Like making a family or farm or business, maintaining a service club, teaching, creating a work of art, or
Just about any endeavor worth doing you can think of.
Because anything worth doing will lead us back to one another and the communities we make like those before us over 150 years ago.
So you're going to have to forgive us tonight for all the history or the significant events that we should have but didn't talk about.
We would have loved to talk about the 150 plus years of the Paisley Advocate from a heritage perspective.
Or the challenges of amalgamation and learning how to work locally and regionally for everyone's sake.
Or the fact that the tidings tree, while of enormous importance to Orchard and Rowe,
was also a significant landmark for our neighbors, the Saugeen First Nations.
We wanted to inspire you to care for our heritage, not just present it all to you.
the idea of a community play is that the community itself comes together to rediscover itself and identify what is essential about their communal life.
So our no ending tonight actually has 3 parts. Part 1, in a few minutes we'll have some food set up downstairs, and all are welcome to partake. And the Legion is open downstairs if you fancy a drink. Christ knows I'm going to get one myself.
And because we want you to stay for a while and share stories to that end,
we've got a videographer, Nick Veenstra. He's over there. He's the only guy with professional photography equipment. If you think about something that you think about with Paisley, we'd love you to come and find Nick and put it on record for us.
Part 3.
You can put your thoughts down on these leaves over there and put them on the tidings tree.
Everything you share will become part of the P150 community play commemorative book.
Or, of course, part 3, you can talk to any of us about the play. Thank you for coming tonight.
No. I have last line.
Well, then say it.